Greetings, law-abiding viewers. I'm Daniel Butler, and this is America's Dumbest Criminals.
This episode of America's Dumbest Criminals. Out of the frying pan. Towing nowhere fast. Starving Stooge. Incompetent. Always on the job and, oh no, Mr. Bills. On America's Dumbest Criminals. And now, here's Daniel Butler.
Trying to outrun the police is stupid because it always ends up the same way. You get caught. But this dumb driver obviously watched just a little too much TV and took a detour that almost sent him on the I-40 westbound to heaven. You see, the car was being driven at speeds of over 100 miles per hour for quite a while. But as in all chases, the highway patrol stayed back, waiting for him to slow down and give up. Well, he appeared to be doing a Jack Kerouac until he exited where there was no exit. He took this leap of faith that catapulted him into the air, through a tree, and flipped his car over to the freeway below. It looked grim. We all assumed that he had met his maker and was already strumming that big harp in the sky when he crawled out of the car and continued his escape on foot. However, he didn't get far and soon found himself cooling his heels in a nice stationary jail cell, which was just a hop, skip, and a jump away. You know, sometimes people just don't know when to hush and say thank you, like this stubborn Texas woman.
How you doing today? Can you turn down the music, please? Go ahead, turn off the motor for a second. Your windows are tinted too dark.
An officer did a routine stop in a car with tinted windows, which are illegal in Texas for safety reasons. Cops need to be able to see into a vehicle before approaching it. Well, the woman driver refused to believe that there was such a law.
How do you know if my windows are too dark?
All the officer was trying to do was let the woman know it was the law and that she should simply get it corrected.
I'll probably give you a warning just for this.
But she said no. Her husband, who had tinted the windows himself, would never believe her.
I'm just going to give you a warning.
I know, but I need something written down because I need to show it to my husband.
And insisted that the officer give her something in writing to prove to her husband that it was really a violation. Well, by this point, the officer was tired of trying to reason with the chatty Cathy and finally just gave her what she wanted.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
A ticket.
Have a nice day.
Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. And Officer Garcia, a.k.a. John Tatarakis, tells us about how he managed to arrest a prostitute on the stroll who warned him about a cop that looked just like him.
One day I go up on the stroll, this new girl is there, and I stop and she says, is your name Garcia? I said, no, my name is Tatarakis. Why? She says, well, the girls told me to be careful because a vice cop named Garcia, so I got to be on the lookout for him. I says, hell, if there's a cop here, I'm leaving. I sure in the heck don't want to get arrested. It would be embarrassing for me and my family. She says, no, wait a minute. I says, well, what does Garcia look like? So when I see him, I can know and I'll get out of here. So she looks at me and she described me to a T. She described me. So I says, wait a minute. I said, look at me. You just described me. I look like Garcia. I says, I'm getting the hell out of here. I don't want to get arrested. She says, no, wait a minute. She looks around and says, I don't see him.
He continued his charade further by asking her what kind of car he drove.
She took a couple steps backwards and says, a blue one just like yours. I says, my God, I'm getting out of here. I'm driving a cop car. I look like a cop. I'm getting out. She says, no, wait a minute. She looks around. He's not here.
After all the chances he gave this woman to save herself, she still propositioned him and was arrested by the cop that looked exactly like it.
So I got my solicitation, put her under arrest, and she says, oh my God, how dumb can I get? I said, pretty stupid.
You know, it seems like criminals are always getting themselves into jams. Now, here's the story of one Florida dope who drove into one. Responding to a robbery in progress call, Lake Mary Police Chief Richard Beery played a hunch and drove to a lesser-used road out of town, figuring the crook would avoid the main drag.
Well, what do you know? Here he is. Gotcha, sucker.
He was dead right, and the crook was plain out of luck when he got stuck in a traffic jam during his getaway. Instead of counting his dough, the stalled stick-up man should have been looking at a map.
Don't move.
It's not mine.
Shut up.
But it was too late for this guy anyway. Stuck in the carpool lane, he found out all dumb roads lead to the same place.
Get out of the car.
It's not mine.
Shut up.
Everyone knows that in the end, a life of crime just won't pan out. One dumb couple learned that the hard way, and a convenience store clerk was reminded of it the even harder way recently in a crime story that all the critics will definitely pan. In a convenience store in Conroe, Texas, a 90s couple decided they were the new Bonnie and Clyde, when they were actually Dumb and Dumber. Their weapon of choice is a frying pan. The short-order robber cracked the clerk over the head and got away with the cash, but he and his wife had forgotten one thing. Yes, believe it or not, their pan plan went to pot when the clueless couple left a couple of big ones for the police. Her purse with her ID and vital information, as well as the pan itself. Fortunately, the clerk was not seriously harmed and was back on the job a few days later while the unskillet robbers were easily picked up on charges of aggravated robbery. They're now doing unskillet labor at the workhouse.
You have the right to remain seated.
Welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week. I'm Daniel Butler, and this is Beaumont Bacon.
Daniel, I am so sorry that I'm late.
okay. No, that's all right.
No, I'm telling you, there was a power outage in my building.
Really?
See, it's still surging from here.
Yeah. Okay.
The lights are dimming in and
Sure.
out. I'm telling you, I
No,
lost
it's
I
fine.
couldn't
Let's
find my
just move on.
keys.
Let's get to
no,
the story.
get this. An airplane landed on the freeway. There, it took off again.
It wasn't on the news.
It will be. I mean, that's pretty big if you think an airplane landed on I-40.
No.
What's a good place
Yeah,
here at
forget
Atlanta? I'm
it.
telling you,
No.
it's there.
I'm not buying it. You were late. Okay, let's just go on.
All right, listen, I hit the snooze button. Wait, go.
Fine, the truth. All right, let's get started.
Would a UFO have been better if I'd said like a UFO?
Maybe a comet. A comet. Maybe a comet. Go ahead.
The whole tap? It
Well, okay, but at least you did put a little thought into it, Beaumont, unlike our first story. An officer in Louisiana sent us this candidate for worst alibi. Caught on videotape, a convenience store robber insisted that the man on the surveillance tape was not him, but in fact, his evil twin brother, that his mother had never told him about. He even wore the evil twin's clothes to his court date, oddly enough.
Well, what I'm wondering is if his mother never told him about his evil twin, then, then how did he know he had one?
I have
and
no
where did
idea.
he get the clothes?
Evil twins or us, somewhere like that.
Look, the only reason I ask is that I think I may have found our evil guy, the twin.
Really?
Yes, because this guy went into a bank and handed the teller a stick-up note. She started to get out the money, but he quickly passed her one of his own deposit slips and said, just put it into my account. So it just goes to show you, even with a clever robber like this, one slip and you're caught.
Yeah, they were really simplifying things. Here's another guy, Beaumont, whose mind was slipping. This young man walked into a company, sat right down in the boss's office. The boss was not in the office, but saw the young man enter from across the hall. Yeah. He was a little concerned because he had left $1,000 in cash in a cash box in one of the desk drawers. As the boss approached the office, the young man greeted him at the door, quickly shoved his resume into his hand and said, "Gotta run," and fled. Sure enough, the money was gone, but the young man's address wasn't. You see, his resume was factual. And after they picked him up, they were able to pass it on to the county jail, where he was guaranteed work for at least 3 to 5 years. Beaumont?
Well, how come he had how did the kid know that he had $1,000 of cash in his desk?
He was looking where he shouldn't look. Temptation rears its ugly head.
There you go. And now, from all the stories sent to us this week from around the country, we have always, just as usual, selected the idiot of the week. An Australian policewoman brought the suspect in for questioning.
Are you going to fess up to this or not?
No, I didn't do anything.
She presented him with his arrest report and told him he had no choice but to fess up, because it was all there in black and white.
Hold on, please.
There was a knock on the door, and she got up to answer it, and while her back was turned, the starving Stooge attempted to destroy the evidence by chewing it. He's chewing on it for all he was worth. That's right.
He's eating.
What did you just do?
What are you doing?
What did you just do?
What are you doing? Get out.
Three
Take it
other
out.
copies.
Sit out.
What our delinquent diner didn't realize was that, like all good government departments, the police do everything in triplicates.
Of course, but if this hasn't changed his evil ways, at least it changed his diet.
I think he's regular now.
It's high-fiber files. While police officer Will O'Dear Jr. was working a traffic accident which reduced traffic down to one lane, angry motorists began to honk their horns. It seems a couple had stopped their car in the middle of the one lane and were now having a tremendous argument.
Police,
I was looking
What do you
at
want?
why are you guys parked in the middle of the road
We're having
here?
an argument.
No, this is not a good place to have an
We
argument.
don't need you right now.
Well, from their belligerent attitudes, coupled with the strong smell of alcohol, the officer ordered the couple to the side of the road and called for a tow truck.
It smells like a brewery in here. Yeah.
Maybe it is.
Well, I need you to step out of the car, okay?
The angry, intoxicated husband began to walk away just as the tow truck was arriving. It seemed things were going smoothly when suddenly the officer heard shouts and turned to see the tow truck driver laying on the ground and the drunk husband jumping into the car behind the wheel. Although he'd walked away, he had crawled back on his hands and knees and was attempting to drive the car away. The man was arrested and charged with multiple violations, including assault and battery on the tow truck driver. Let's face it, this was one dumb criminal who was definitely towing nowhere fast. This next story is about a teenager who gets into a lot of trouble and a television set that really gets around. You see, a woman had her apartment broken into. Her television set, her VCR, her CDs, and her jewelry had all been stolen. But she could tell the officers what the thief looked like, and she could point right across the hall to where the thief lived. While the police were interviewing the victim, the suspect came walking down the hallway and right up to them.
Can you give us a description? Hey, buddy, hang on just a second. I want to talk to you.
Within moments, he confessed, and the police recovered almost all of the stolen items except for the television, which was at another location.
I can't believe it. Wherever we move, cops are always hassling us.
But now here's where the story changes channels. When the youth took the police to the apartment where he'd stashed the television, the police couldn't help but notice an identifying label on the TV that said Western Trails Motel. The youth insisted he had stolen it from his neighbor, so the police went back to talk to the victim.
Oh, man, you guys are back so fast.
How you doing?
Good, good.
I have some good news for you.
Oh, good. You found my stuff.
Yes, but we have some bad news, too. Not all that stuff is yours. That TV set, that's from the Western Trails Motel.
Despite her protest of innocence, the police were able to prove that the woman who had been the victim had been a guest at the Western Trails Motel 2 days before with her boyfriend, and the television had been missing from its room. The police went down to the station with the victim and the perpetrator in the front and the perpetrator in the back of the squad car.
Coming up next on America's Dumbest Criminals, stealing the stolen, always on the job, and oh no, Mr. Bill.
A rare criminal who will disappear without a trace. Usually they're so dumb they'll even trace an outline around the scene of their own dumb crime. You don't believe it? Take a look at this next chunk. An already intoxicated individual was being denied entrance to a bar, told by the bouncers that he didn't have a proper ID.
Well, how if I had to drink here and then I'll just walk out?
Look, you're not going to get a drink here. You've had enough. Go find me a good ID. You're welcome to come back and talk to me, okay? Until then.
Just then, 2 Phoenix police officers arrived on the silly scene.
Thanks, God.
What's the problem?
Can you tell them this is me?
Yep, that looks like you.
I just want to
You
drink.
sure it's you?
Yes, that's me. Can you check that, please, and just let them know that it's me?
The request was honored, and the police found something very interesting.
I have some bad news for you.
It's me, right?
It's you. It sure is. Turn around, put your hands behind your back. Palms together. Spread your legs. We're arresting you for warrants.
Told you it was me.
And so ends the case of the good ID and a bad idea. It seems when you decide to break the law, things just don't go your way. Take the next 2 star-crossed duffers, for example. They managed to escape from prison, steal a car, and immediately pulled off another robbery. Oddly enough, though, they found themselves in the same street as a patrol car. And despite their attempts to avoid pulling right up next to the officer, he spotted them and ran their license number.
Driver, go ahead, turn off the motor. Step out of the car for me.
Well, of course, it shows up stolen. When questioned after their arrest, though, the police discovered that they had stolen the car and stolen other license plates to avoid suspicion. The only problem is someone else had already stolen those plates. Bummer. You just can't trust anyone anymore. Some criminals never feel guilty for the crimes they've committed, probably because they have an incredibly short attention span. Our next story demonstrates the danger of forgetfulness. Diamonds are normally a girl's best friend, especially when she doesn't have to pay for them. But when a check is stolen and passed as your own, diamonds can be your downfall. Everyone in this story has got a lapse of memory. When the saleswoman discovered that she had forgot to wrap the necklace and put it in the bag, a quick phone call to the bank clued her into the scam. So, she could hardly believe her ears when Diamond Lild, who passed the bad check and hadn't left with her necklace, called to cuss her out. Totally forgetting she had just committed a no-no, this dizzy dame returns to the store to pick up her little diamond bauble that she'd written the bad check for. What the dummy didn't know was that the clerk had called the cops and they were there waiting.
Hi, I'm back. Hi, Miss
How are you? Sorry about that.
Well, luckily I didn't get too far.
Yeah, things happen like that.
So you're going to give me a better price on the necklace now? That's great.
No, don't think so. Officer?
She didn't get her necklace, though, but all's not lost. She's now wearing fashionable new matching steel alloy bracelets, compliments of the police department. If you're arrested, the police always offer you one phone call to get in contact with a family member, attorney, or a friend. This next deluded dialer decided that there was only one way to get the help he needed. After being arrested for public intoxication one night, this man was placed in the holding pen and told he could make one call. The guy waits until the officer leaves and then quickly picks up the phone and appears to be very distraught. He immediately hung up when the officer came back into the room. None of this appeared to be unusual in any way. However, it's who he called that takes the cake.
You've got to help me. I'm being held captive against my will. There's people all around me. No, don't you know my address? I can't tell you. There's people all around here. They're gonna hear me. You don't understand, you've got to come right away. I've been taken against my will. I need your help. I gotta go. He's coming.
As a last hope, he had dialed 911, which traced the call and found out that it was coming from within their own building. Hello? The dispatcher came downstairs and checked. Yep, sure enough, he was being held against his will.
Freeze! Drop the remote. We'll be right back.
Freeze! Drop the remote.
You know, sometimes there are just certain tip-offs that you might not be getting that special job you applied for. Maybe the interview didn't go well, could be there were stronger candidates, or perhaps you decided to rob the joint.
A Dallas police officer and her partner were responding to a robbery in progress call when they spotted a suspect just outside the store.
I'm going to talk to you for a minute.
Let's talk.
What are you doing?
Nothing.
Where you coming from?
Nowhere.
All right.
We'll see.
Too bad for the runaway robber. He already had a permanent record on file with this particular store.
That's him. That's the
That's
guy with
you.
the money.
I've never seen you before in my life.
What? Were you just in here?
You know who you are.
Sure? Hold on.
Prove it, huh? Prove it.
Which one are you?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know how much money I got.
Well, this yours?
Yeah, it's mine. What do you mean? It's my
Look right
pockets,
here.
isn't it?
Look right here.
It is.
It's his application. He filled out an
Yeah,
application
prove it.
here to work here.
Prove it, punk.
I can prove it, buddy, right there.
Oh, damn.
It's his driver's license.
The suspect was immediately arrested, and as for his job application, that went into the permanent file at the county jail. This high-speed chase ended up with more than a tire blowing on the freeway. A man had robbed a local bank and started a long high-speed chase on a nearby freeway. However, his getaway car wasn't prepared for a cross-country crusade, and he soon blew a tire, forcing our reckless robber to alter his flight to a foot race. And he's off across the freeway, and he's attempting to scale a nearby fence with Olympic grace. However, his dismount was less than perfect, which caused him to release his fistful of dollars high into the wind. The judges were not swayed. This was not the Kerry Strug of dumb crime. He was quickly caught, disqualified, and banned from future freeway competitions. We hope that you've learned one thing from this show. You can lead a criminal to water, but you can't make him think. We'll see you next week on America's Dumbest Criminals.
Don't forget to watch these incredibly dumb stories on next week's episode of America's Dumbest Criminals.
What's all this white stuff right up here?
Where? A scratch and sniff greeting in Got Coke? Serenading the jury in Courthouse Rock. A woman makes a deposit in Bad Liver Lady. A locked out loser in Keyless Clubs. These stories and more on next week's America's Dumbest Criminals.
We're funny. What about you?
Look, it's a Southern funeral.
That's so really neat.
Next story.
Daniel, here's a story about a California counterfeiter. You have to say
He
it
was
that
Swedish?
way. He was Swedish. Folks, this is comedy at the spur of the moment. There's nothing like sunbathing in a tropical forest. It's alive!
How about that tooth?